Hey guys, so I wanted to record a video on how I got to 7 figures and the lessons I learned along the way, the mistakes, the lessons, also the success we've had along the way. So I hope this is going to be very helpful. The first one here is in finding a mentor. Now the reason why this is important and where I've actually got it wrong many times is because ultimately you always need someone to guide you. You always need a North Star along the way, and while you are going to come up with your own sort of dreams and aspirations, what really helps is having someone that's already done it, because if you're around people that have already done it, it kind of removes a lot of that overthinking. And me coming from quite an analytical background, I did study financing in university. My tendency is to analyze the upside, analyze the downside in every scenario, but this is like can slow you down and means you move very slowly through the levels of business. So finding a mentor is important, and one area that I've got wrong in the past, and one area that will be a massive win. The next area we have got here is not thinking too much. So it actually ties in from the first point, and that is that when you're getting started, you're going to have doubts. When you're getting started, you're going to think a lot. Is this the right plan? Is this the right project? Am I doing things right? It goes on. The problem with that is you use up a lot of energy in that kind of back and forth thinking, and this is why it comes back to, when I say don't overthink, it actually comes back to point one as well. Whereas if you can find someone that's already walked that path, again, it doesn't have to be the exact thing, but if there's people you admire or aspire to have some of the things they have, if they've already walked that path, it removes a lot of that thinking and allows you to move forward at much greater speed than would be otherwise. So the third one here is focusing on one business. Now, ultimately, it's nice and sexy to be able to say I run multiple companies, but you've got to be able to do that well. And the only way to do that well, or to have a portfolio of companies, if that is your goal one day, is to get really good at business itself. And the way to get really good at business is to go in depth on one business. That doesn't mean breadth by doing multiple businesses at once. It means going in depth on one business, because that will allow you to understand the operations, the systems, the marketing, the finance, the HR. These are all the key things to be a business operator. And unless you've started and stuck with one business to learn those things, then you are ultimately just sacrificing your long-term success, because you're simply going to not understand how certain areas in business work, and that's going to be a major disadvantage going forward. So to me, it's all about the long term. So I'm looking in terms of decades. I'm not looking in terms of years. Of course, each year we want to inch further and further towards our goals, but we've got to think long term on these things. Now, the next lesson, this one was particularly hard to me, because I think when I was younger, I was quite, I would say, a people pleaser, or I was quite insecure. So I always looked to kind of make things right, or keep things right with everyone around me, and everyone has an opinion and everyone means well, but ultimately everyone's opinion is not what's right for you. You've got to be obviously listening to people that have walked that path, or listening to people that have expertise in those areas, but you're going to get a lot of opinions. And the hardest thing for me, and the biggest sort of win, or the biggest sort of confirming trait that I've developed, is basically the confidence to ignore everyone, and that doesn't mean ignoring people that you trust and people you confide in, but ultimately you've got to have enough confidence to say, no, I know what I'm doing in this situation, and I'm going to stick with this until it either succeeds or it fails, because that's the way you're going to learn. Now, that means in some situations for me, I was actually not going to a lot of social gatherings, so family events, weddings, things like this. I actually skipped them early on, because I just didn't have the confidence, or I was too insecure to I was kind of tired of listening to people, to be honest, because everyone has opinions, and at a certain point I just kind of withdrew from everything else, and I was missing a lot of things that maybe seemed strange at the time. But for me, that was the path I chose. That was the way I done it. It was kind of isolation at the start. I'm pretty sure you can do it other ways, and I would recommend doing it other ways. But me being me, that was my journey at the start, was to kind of stick with it, follow the path I'd laid out, and having the confidence to ignore everyone was a big one. So The next thing here is like the comforts, because it's easy once you start making money to start spending it, whether you get the car or the watch or the nice place, and these things are important, but you've got to be measured. And the reason you've got to be measured is because it's difficult to kind of go back from those comforts. You know, when I've created like a lot of great lifestyle changes or a lot of great things in my life, whether that's like where I'm living in the villa or the gyms I'm going to or the watches I have or whatever it is, the path back from that is extremely difficult, you know. And it's one that I would say, if you can delay gratification for as long as possible with those things, you've got to be able to feed yourself, feed your energy, feed your own engine, which is going to come down to you. You know what you need at any one time. But the more you can delay those things, the better it's going to be, because it's hard to give them up if you ever needed to. And there is mistakes at the start. There is things that you're going to get wrong, which are oftentimes the biggest lessons in business. So yeah, the final one, or the next one I've got here, is also knowing that success is inevitable. So in any of the people I've talked to, whether I've mentored or helped younger people or helped anyone, my number one advice is to commit to one thing and then have faith, you know, and that might be God, that might be the universe. For me, that is God, but having faith that it's going to work out, you know. And this is very important because, again, going back to our earlier points, you do not want to spend a lot of time overthinking and is this going to work, is that going to work. We know that there's no guarantees with these things, but if you stick at one thing long enough, success is inevitable. Like it's not going to happen. So have faith, take that in, and then march forward with that confidence, march forward with that faith, because ultimately that's what's going to see you have success sooner, rather than spending half your energy wondering and not committing all in, you know. Now the final one I have here as well is creating yourself, and this kind of comes through all of the other lessons and mistakes along the way. Is ultimately you're going to start to create yourself. At the start, you're not going to have any intuition on things because you don't have experience. It's more a case of setting down a target and getting to it. After a while, you're going to start to develop an intuition, you're going to have experience, and then you're going to be able to see the areas where you were lacking. So for me, in some situations, that would have been public speaking, maybe social situations, or I think back to childhood. Whereas now that's not the case. I have no issue with any of those things. In fact, I enjoy it, I love it. But you've got to create yourself. So you've got to really be intentional with, these are the characteristics I have, these come a little bit easier to me, these are the ones that I kind of struggle with, and these are ones I need to put time into, and be strategic with that. And then ultimately, as you create yourself, and as the years go by, you become a person you can really respect and be proud of, you know. And that to me is the ultimate success in entrepreneurship. Of course, it's nice to have the watches and the cars, etc. But when you look in the mirror and you go, that's a guy I admire because he's been through some shit and he's kept at it and he's stuck at it and he's came out the other side as a man, as someone with wisdom and experience, and that to me is fucking cool. So I hope that was helpful. If there was any advice I had to my younger self is have faith. You don't need to rush things so much. It's going to happen, there's no doubt about it. But you've got to keep at it, you've got to be committed, and you've got to adhere to all of those things that I've mentioned out in order to speed up that process. And I wish you all the best.